Hello, I'm Michael Pierce, and this is The Human Condition. Our topic today is the Start Here diet. I don't really know what to call this, but I call it the Start Here diet because so many people ask me, where should I start when I'm changing my diet? Many people don't have any lab tests and they don't have the money for a lab test, but they're reasonably healthy. They've talked to their doctor and their doctor told them to eat healthier and they don't really know what that means. So I would like to tell you what I have seen work in my practice. I'm not your doctor, but I'd like to tell you what I've seen over 30 years of practice and just thousands and thousands of families and tracking them for years and years. So I know this works. You'll find that there are several rules that work very well for a lot of people. They're not true for everyone, and they're not true for people that have more difficult health issues. However, there are times that even very, very great health issues respond to these types of ideas. So talk to your doctor and figure out what you want to do. I think that it's important to first ask yourself, am I looking for weight loss? Am I looking for chronic disease treatment or reversal? Am I looking to prevent a disease that's prevalent in my family with my genetics? Am I just looking for general health and I want to feel better and function better at work and offer more energy to my family and myself? So I think that one of the most simple ways to begin being healthy in today's world, in the United States at least, is to start with trying to go to 50% of your calories from fat. That means if a person's diet is 2,000 calories a day, then 1,000 calories would be from fat. And so we know that fat is 9 calories per gram. That's how you do the calculation to figure out how many grams of fat that might roughly be. Now you have to calculate for yourself how many calories you need for your activity level. And there are many calorie calculators that are online that'll help you figure that out. What I don't like for people to do is when they want to lose weight, they often go to just dropping their calories down severely to 1,200 or 800. And sometimes they take a drug or they don't take a drug, but they don't realize that this may be a problem. And it may be easier for them to just go low carb and they would lose weight without having to reduce their calories, which I know sounds crazy, but a calorie is not a calorie is not a calorie. And if you're into this stuff that I'm into, then go to YouTube and watch Low Carb Down Under, which is really my favorite channel on YouTube. It's so amazing with so many great people. And they open this up in much more detail than I have time for on our channel. I also like to say that what is low carb? Low carb is about 25% of your calories from carbohydrates. 26%. That's not a keto diet, that's a low carb diet. So the threshold for low carbohydrates begins at about 26% carbohydrates. So again, if you're having a 2,000 calorie diet, then we're looking at 26% of your diet or less would be from carbohydrates, and there are carbohydrates are 4 calories per gram. The amount of anti-nutrients is really important. If a person is eating a lot of anti-nutrients or plant anti-nutrients like lectins and raffinose and oxalates and phytates and even just plain old plant fiber, a lot of plant fiber can be a real problem. The least problematic plant fiber is probably pectin in fruit, but the general idea is that fiber is not a nutrient. It's not required. You don't need fiber to poop. Plenty of carnivores, animals and humans eat without having to have any fiber, and they have fine bowel movements. Their bowel movements are driven by largely adequate sodium. Realize that when people get in these diets of low carb or higher fat and lower fiber, they need about twice as much sodium. And you'll find this in every renal physiology textbook, kidney physiology textbook, every textbook that looks at ketogenic and carnivore diets and low carb diets, that the need for sodium goes up by twice. Now, obviously, if you're on an antihypertensive medication or you've got high blood pressure, you've got to consider how to manage that blood pressure. And the really great news is almost everybody that's either diabetic or has high blood pressure responds well in about 14 days to a low carb diet. And they may have to modify their salt and modify their medication and carefully monitor their blood pressure and their blood sugar when they do this. Now, I'm not saying that you want to do this on your own, but I've done this a ton with a bunch of people with medical doctors at my side who can change the prescribing regimen for the patients and titrate them down, because your doctors don't believe you that you're going to change your blood pressure and your diabetes in very often in 2 weeks. But there's a bunch of documentary films out showing people doing this just by getting together in a group and supporting each other And eating a low carb, high fat diet with adequate protein, we're not talking about a high protein or a low protein diet, we're talking about an adequate protein diet. Somewhere around, 75 to 100 grams of protein a day, sometimes more for people that are more active or more carnivore or more bodybuilding. Absolutely, that's fine. Then the other thing I want to mention is that everybody needs a mineral supplement. There is not enough trace minerals in the world for people in the United States in the soil. So we don't put it in our soil. So, we don't get enough in our soil. So the food doesn't grow with enough minerals. So you really need to have some kind of multi-trace mineral product. That could be sea salt, Celtic sea salt that you grind with a grinder, or it could be a pill that you take or a liquid that you take. I don't get any kickbacks from any of these companies, but I use all kinds of different things like concentrates from Trace Minerals Research brand. I use Celtic sea salt. I use Redmond salt. I use Himalayan salt, although there's been some toxins found in Himalayan salt. It's still probably better to use Himalayan salt than table salt that you get in a restaurant because that's garbage. The garbage iodized salt that you get. I would like to see people take an iodine supplement, not an iodine salt, but an iodine supplement, either some kind of a supplement pill or some kind of liquid like Lugel's iodine, or they could consider eating seafood and different types of seafood and even seaweed that contains iodine in it. Dulse powder contains iodine. There's all kinds of ways of getting various forms of iodine from natural food sources. If a person is into this kind of diet, you really aren't eating organ meats. So I think an organ meat pill is my favorite kind of multivitamin. I think that, when people ask me what's the best multivitamin, I say grass-fed beef organ meats that are ground up. Hearts, livers, kidneys, pancreases, stomachs, lungs, whatever you can get. The general idea is to vary the type of organ, not just liver, because there is some controversy about this, that if you give a pregnant woman just liver, it might be too much vitamin A. And yes, that is possible, but it's not very likely. You'd have to eat bushels of cooked carrots to do that, or bushels of organ meat pills. So it's possible to do that. And some people's families have high genetic tendencies for hemochromatosis, which is iron retention. So those people have to be careful eating liver. It doesn't mean they can't eat organ meats and they can't be carnivore. It just means, in fact, carnivore is a great thing because of the oxidative stress of carbohydrates. That's really what drives the problem of iron retention in people with hemochromatosis. So in general, if a person is avoiding carbohydrates and avoiding seed oils and avoiding processed foods and alcohol, they can eat a diet that is keto or carnivore if they have hemochromatosis. But you got to work with your doctor and your hepatologist and your liver specialist, all these different people. Don't just take my word for it. Another thing that people do very well with is get a supplement that is a supplement for collagen. Some kind of collagen that's made of collagen powder or collagen pills, type 1, 2, 3, and 4 collagen, and there's more types, but you generally want more than one type of collagen to support all the different tissues in your body, like your ears and your nose, your discs, your cartilage in your knees, all your blood vessels, all your ligaments. As a chiropractor, I think that's really important. I think that it's really useful to get sunlight. It's really important to get infrared sunlight as well as ultraviolet sunlight, and to avoid blue light and electromagnetic fields. And I think it's really useful to get inexpensive sleep apps if you can afford an application on your smartphone that measures your sleep, or that you can use that's across the room that measures your sounds, because you don't want your smartphone near you because of the EMFs. So you want an app that can listen to you snoring or listen to your sounds of the night, and you can have them far away. I don't love wearables because of the EMF, but if you really needed to wear just one night of a ring or some kind of a monitor, that could be very useful to find out what your sleep is doing. I think it's also useful to get a tape measure and just measure your body, measure all your limbs, measure your trunk and your neck and your waist and your bust and all of that stuff. You can also get calipers online for $12 and buy calipers and a chart and do your own body fat. Pinch an inch and find out, if you're pinching an inch or not. And there's standards of where the pinch is at the abdomen here. You can learn to measure your own body fat percentage with calipers. It's low tech. It's fairly accurate. I don't like body mass index. I like body fat percentage. I also think that it's very useful to consider getting an electric device that either measures your feet or your hands or both. And those range from $35 to $80 that measure your impedance, and they measure your body fat percentage by putting a small electric current through your body. I think that it's important to consider a ketone chart. If you're into ketogenic diets, as many of my seizure-based children patients are, and adults, when you're trying to control epilepsy and seizure disorders, and really any brain condition responds well to a ketogenic diet, The idea is, about zero point 0.8 to 3.0 units of ketones is important. You can get a ketone meter for $20, and it's basically a glucometer with a ketone meter built in. You poke the side of your finger or the side of your toes, and you need a lancet and you need a strip, which each is $1. So if you do that twice a day, you're looking at $4 a day for 2 lancets and 2 strips, plus a $20 device that never wears out, basically, and has a little battery in it. And it's a ketone/glucometer, and it's blood. It's not urine. It's not saliva. It's very important to know that. And there's a bunch of breath tests out there, and they're great, and they're new, and they're developing. But generally, it's just smart to get a simple test and do it every day, twice a day or more, for 2 weeks, and learn how to measure your own ketones. So these are some basic things of how I start, by reducing lectins, by reducing all these different anti-nutrients in food, by going low carb, and by trying to get cleaner food that's less processed without knowing what your blood labs necessarily look like. What you can do at home with simple tools you can buy in the store or online, in a pharmacy or online. I think it's really important to know that you can do a lot without having your blood work or urine tests or hair tests and expensive lab tests. There's a bunch that people can do. If you're feeling relatively healthy, it's pretty easy. If you've got a condition, you really might want to work with your doctor and be careful about some of this, because there's a lot of things that can happen. But there's a lot less side effects to keto and carnivore diets and low carb diets than nearly any other diet. And the keto diet has been studied more than any other human diet in the world. And there's emerging studies by Virta Health and other people like Stephen Phinney and Jeff Volek and Tim Noakes, and there's a whole bunch of people that have been studying this, and new information is coming out. Brett Scher has a show online about mental health and keto diets and carnivore type diets. You'll see that there's a whole lot that's funded by the Buzaki Group. There's a whole bunch of really wonderful things out there, and new studies that are emerging in the last few years. Longer term studies, like 3-year duration studies of ketogenic diets and carnivore diets. So we're starting to see that in the world of mental health and the world of physical health, everything from diabetes and cancers and bad discs, all the way to mental health, depression, anxiety, bipolar, etc. William Walsh has talked about this in the walshinstitute.org. So there's just a tremendous amount of resources out there. And I would just say get started. Get started and monitor your symptoms and join a group. Go to our website and get my free ebook. It's Elimination Diets 101. I also have another little ebook, which is questions you can ask your doctor about any condition. If you want to find out how your doctor is, or improve your relationship with your doctor, or find out how your doctor thinks, you might be able to find out a lot about yourself and about your doctor by asking questions that I've come up with. So check out both of those free ebooks on my website, humanconditionlab.com. And also, when you go to my website, humanconditionlab.com, that's where you'll find the emerging stuff that we're going to post on memberships. So if you're interested in being part of a community, you're interested in getting access to courses that I've written, if you're interested in access to events where you can ask me anything, those are coming. It's taking time and it's taking development, but you'll find that that's where we'll be releasing that information, is on our website. Thank you.